City attorneys.
Hi, Kirk Young.
Nice to meet you.
And I'm Cindy Olson,
Hi, Cindy.
planning commission.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, Slavin, nice to meet you.
Ken, nice to meet you. Thanks for having us today.
Of course.
Give me 1 second to get on and I want to pull up my as well.
I don't think, we've had a 1041 come to planning before.
That's true. Couple, Deep Pier Shoulder Lane project and the Veterans Memorial Tunnels project and the Highway 314 or the County Road 314 project as well. Most recent.
I remember there used to be some difficulties to get it done. Back in the old days.
I'm sure there's still plenty of difficulties.
I heard that as well. I'm happy that it's more collaborative these days.
Yeah.
So.
And one of the old names, I just found out we lost him. Did you hear that, Jonathan?
Who?
Dennis?
Dennis Lumberry? When did that happen?
I think the 27th of January.
Oh, that's sad.
I know.
I did not know that.
I was going through this and that's all I kept thinking about was him today, because he was such a part of this at the beginning. Let's see that stuff.
Yeah, he's kind of the
Yeah.
impetus of everything, really.
Yeah.
He's why we have a CSS.
Okay, sorry.
Let me just come up. You.
Okay.
Panelist, and I will just start by, as we've kind of talked about, 1041's per code strictly, well, I guess, do we have to start the work session, anything officially, or? Just kind of talk. Yeah. So yeah, strictly speaking, we don't, the code doesn't require council or a planning commission review, but, you know, Andy and myself, we both thought keeping you as knowledgeable as possible is not everything that's going on is only helpful, and you know, I imagine that the planning commission has as you know, important feedback that can help make the project, you know, potentially even better, which is why we're here for this aspect. So I don't know how much detail you want me to give, or if you want to just jump over to Kurt to kind of give his presentation.
I read through it all. I understand the presentation part of it. And then you guys submitted questions and they had to go back and forth with each of the items, right?
Well, so
That's just where I have notes.
going through like the approval criteria, which really starts on page 5. This is what in chapter 25 of the code, we're required to review the proposal against. And so what's in italics is my analysis of the whole, like their finding of no significant impact, environmental assessment, all of this, and determining whether or not they meet each item. And so maybe, you know, I guess the key things that I identified in the plan and that were brought up there, because we referred this out to a number of organizations, Aqua, which is the watershed.
Right, I'm on
So-
that one too.
Right, so we referred it to Aqua, we referred it to like engineering, to public works, fire district. Did Aqua responded about water quality being an important impact, which we're discussing here. I think water quality in general is a corridor-wide issue rather than necessarily something that's specific to this proposal and the work associated with it. You know, as Kurt will probably mention, there's a number of permanent monitoring items that are included with the proposal to help protect water quality in the future. There is a issue task force for water that's currently ongoing. That has been meeting to try to address water quality across the Clear Creek watershed. And John actually sits on our technical team for the project, so he's kind of been involved in this process quite a lot of time.
I think the waters, Aqua just kind of gives their letters of support or not support.
Yeah.
I'm fine with having him do the presentation, or you can.
Sure.
Yeah, and then we can ask, yeah.
Then we can ask questions and stuff after.
or during, however works best for you.
Great, we can be informal.
Yeah.
Hopefully I can do this. I always like having two screens when I do this.
It's like, wait, what does
Let
that
me
mean?
know. All right. Well, thank you for having me here today. I have two of our project team joining us today. Mandy Horton, who's on her way, should be here very shortly. And then Emily Wilfong, she's one of our communications leads on the project, just to talk about some of our outreach and communication efforts that we're doing on the project. The goal today is just to inform where we're at in the project, look at some timelines for when the project's going to be done. Also look at the different elements of the project. I have several slides here that looks at the noise wall that is slated to go in right at exit 241. And then some communications things as well. So the first slide that I have here is the way that we're delivering this project. So we are delivering it in 4 different packages. B section is the first package that is under construction right now. That started just after the 4th of July of last year, and that will carry on through the summer of 2026. That is everything in the dark blue that you see up on the screen there. The next package, which is why we're here today, is our west section, which covers everything from Hidden Valley Central City Parkway to exit 241 at Idaho Springs that you see in the purple up there. And so barring everything going okay, construction is slated to start on that in March of this year and go through the summer of 2028. Then the third package is we're calling it an access package. If you look at the critical path components of the project that we have in our fourth package, we're pulling some of those out to get a start on them, which will decrease the overall amount of contract time. What that really covers is some of the excavation near Sawmill Gulch and also creating some access roads to build the big westbound structure at the bottom of Floyd Hill. So you see that in the fall of this year. And then the final fourth package is the central section, which is everything in orange up there. It's everything between the bottom of Floyd Hill and US 6 to Hidden Valley Central City Parkway. And that's structures heavy. That's the most complicated section of the project, which we can see from a rendering that I have here shortly. And yes, so that will all be complete it's slated to be complete by the end of 2020.
And the thing that's a little confusing, I guess, is that the west section includes the noise wall that you mentioned, but that will be submitted as part of the central package.
Correct.
Because of timing, and we'll probably go into
Great.
that, but
Great comment, Dylan. Yeah, and the rationale behind there is it's actually a very complicated noise wall because it's a very narrow corridor with the Greenway Trail and a lot of significant utilities in there, but I think we do have a path forward. So in order so that we could design that, we move that to a later package. It's still going to get constructed at the same time frame. It just for us to get a little bit better design on it as we move through it. I know you guys have had us here before and we've talked about all the project improvements, but I just wanted to highlight them very quickly. Some of the primary components of the Floyd Hill project is relieving that bottleneck that's created at Floyd Hill in the westbound direction. So it's adding that third lane, which is an express lane that will tie into the Mountain Express lanes just on this side of the Veterans Memorial Tunnels. It is also a lot of safety improvements. If you drive through there now, steep slopes, curves, we're flattening those out. And so when you come down Floyd Hill now, it's a 45-degree curve at the bottom of the hill. And we're bringing that up to 55 mile an hour with proper sight distance. When I say sight distance, it's so if you see a vehicle in front of you or something in the road in front of you, that gives you time to stop. So improved shoulders, improved radiuses of the curves throughout this section. We're also adding a frontage road connection that doesn't exist today from the bottom of Floyd Hill where US 6 and 40 are, and tying that into County Road 314 at Hidden Valley Central City Parkway. So that'll be another route for emergency vehicles or should something block I-70.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You says the new lane will be tolled. So that's from the top of Floyd Hill?
Yes, so
I thought the toll was private funding that did the toll road. It wasn't CDOT, all CDOT funding, and it's narrower is why it's a toll road. How is
okay, great question.
this tolled?
Couple things that is different. So the Mountain Express lane is a peak period toll lane essentially on the shoulder. That should not be confused to what we're doing. We're doing a 24/7 express lane as part of Floyd Hill. It will be operated 24/7. It will have standard shoulders. It will have the 2-foot buffer in between the other two lanes in the express lane.
But is it tolled?
The express lane will be tolled.
So then what happens with somebody that has, how's that funding meshed together? Because if it's an express lane and it's tolled, and then you've got the peak to peak and that's tolled, are they different?
So I am an engineer, so I'm gonna try my best to talk about funding a little bit. But yes, and so we put together a big report of projecting what that funding is coming in from this express lane to pay for as much of the project as we can possibly get on it. And so it is funded through the enterprise, which operates tolling at CDOT. I would probably need to get somebody else to talk detailed funding of tolling and how all
Yeah, I was
that
wondering
works,
where
but
that money goes, because.
it goes back into the corridor.
Into that,
So yes,
our part of the corridor, our
Correct.
project.
Yep, yep.
I know it's- it sounds like.
So since that's open full-time, someone would take that, but then when you get to the peak period, express lane, leave that, right? Because that wouldn't be open all the time.
Correct. So there is
Well,
a,
won't that create a nightmare?
Just move the bottlenecking down the road a bit.
Yeah,
so the premise behind it is during those peak period times, the Mountain Express lane is open.
Right.
And so that folks will carry on through there. During those off-peak times, it is closed. And so you don't have that high volume of traffic, so you won't see that big bottleneck.
Will that still not just move the bottleneck down to Empire where the peak lane goes away?
no, it'll create it here because it'll go away here. All of a sudden you'll go from,
No, I mean, even when it's open. Even when it's
oh,
open.
it still will, it's
It
still.
still goes down to 2 lanes. Eventually, it seems like,
that
I
one's
have a
not so
question
bad.
about how this can claim to improve traffic flow by the flattening out the curves, increasing sight lines, improving safety. That all sounds like a really great idea. It's an extreme piece of road there.
Yep,
I don't understand how it can claim to improve traffic flow when adding lanes is shown to create more traffic. Through reduced demand, through more cars moving through the area. And an express lane means people get to pay for it. But many times, express lanes right around here, for instance, on I-25, it's just empty because nobody wants to pay for it while there's bumper to bumper traffic in the normal traffic lanes. And I don't understand how any project can claim to improve traffic flow when there's no public transportation as part of it.
Well, that'll
There-
increase that.
There is,
tremendously.
so that's my question, I'm sorry, I'll rephrase that. What is the public transportation part of
so as part
That's
of
awesome.
the Floyd Hill project and working with Clear Creek County and Idaho Springs as
Yeah.
well, CDOT has implemented in the last year a shuttle service called Pegasus.
Mhm.
And the benefit of Pegasus is it's a smaller van that can operate in the Mountain Express lane.
it? That's one.
So they can use that and go up. And so as part of our strategy is to get people out of
Mhm.
the single occupancy vehicles and to use transit options. And so
Great.
we're also, as part of the Floyd Hill umbrella projects, adding a shuttle lot at El Rancho where folks can come and park, jump on Pegasus, go up ski, come back down, and
And
so
we're also, that's a primary reason why we're building a mobility hub,
Yeah,
because we know we can reduce CO2 emissions by increasing density of vehicle travel on I-70 with these options. And one of the reasons we want that mobility hub is Project Pegasus and Bus Sync can access that space much more easily, whether it's through a slip lane or through a easy turnaround where they can just come in and out. And so it's not a part of this project, it's like part of the general strategic plan of the corridor.
Wonderful, well, thank you, and I apologize.
Well, and you're right, I mean, you build the
I
lanes,
appreciate
they
it.
fill up,
Yeah.
and so some of the benefits to a tolled express lane is you have that travel time reliability.
Yeah.
I'm the guy that, traffic's backed up, I'm sitting in the traffic, not going in the express lane because, I'm probably not in a hurry. But
Right,
if I need to get somewhere to a doctor's appointment, then you have that travel time reliability.
wonderful, and there's no better advertisement for public transportation than getting passed by it.
Exactly, yep.
Well, thank you so
Great
much.
point.
That's
No,
wonderful.
great questions, keep coming.
I have a question, just a quick one.
Is it gonna be one of those lanes that's an HOV lane that you can use the toll pass and get on when you have 3 or more, or?
As of
The other
now,
one isn't.
correct, as of now, it will be similar to the other one
Okay.
and not for HOV 3+.
As of now, are you just being polite, or is there like any plans in the future or discussion?
I haven't been a part of any
Okay,
plans
cool.
or
Just curious.
future discussion, and so. I know we get lots of questions about what is the toll rate gonna be and all of
Yeah.
this stuff, and that's still being worked out.
It changes. I travel it every day, so it changes
Yep,
depending on the volume of traffic and stuff. And I have to say, the one thing nice about it, it really works if you're the type of traveler I am that gets on the frontage road, because less people get on the frontage road, so it makes it nice. It's, yeah,
and that's the goal. and
Yeah, it is.
I do believe it
So as a
will,
local, you do it that way, yeah.
will improve traffic flow.
Nice.
Just having that option there, I think, being a regular skier and going up and down here, I did see improvements from the Mountain Express lane.
I was just trying to understand the toll of it, because if it's gonna be tolled and then,
Yeah, and one question that I didn't think I got to was, once you get out past the Veterans Memorial Tunnels, you will have the option to safely merge back into the general purpose lanes or to merge into the Mountain Express lane if it's open.
and
So
that's on this side then of the tunnel.
the merge will happen on this side. Yes, I gotta orient myself.
Town
Yes,
side.
the town side.
Mhm.
Yep.
That'll be kind of a tough one, because then you've got your exit ramp getting off the,
Yeah,
yeah.
it does work, and I believe it's going to be very safe from the current plans that we have. Just a couple more things to highlight, some of the environmental mitigation with wildlife connectivity. If you drive the stretch, you'll see a nearly complete wildlife crossing at Genesee, which is great. We're installing wildlife fence up and down the corridor to reduce those conflicts with vehicles and wildlife. It's a heavy crash animal corridor through here, so that will be improvements. We have our 2 permanent water or permanent air quality monitors installed as part of the project. One is at the health center, right over there. So upstream, and then we have one downstream at the fire station at the top of the Floyd Hill. So with that, I might jump out of here for just a second and show the fly through of the project. So let me share that real quick and then we'll go back to it. All right, so just to orient you before I hit play on this, we are headed down Floyd Hill. So Homestead Road is behind us. We're descending down the hill. This is future Floyd Hill. You can see here in the westbound direction, you have those 2 general purpose lanes, the buffer, the express lane, the shoulders. And then in the eastbound direction, you can see those 3 general purpose lanes that is today, still remain. And then an added lane there for that new connection that we're creating at the bottom of Floyd Hill from US 6 and carrying that all the way up to 6% grade before that lane drops. And the rationale for that is so the trucks can get up to speed. So on the right, you can see the off-ramp to US 6, which is pulled way up the hill
Oh, wow.
to make it less of a grade as you go down. Right now, it's pretty steep as you get off and head towards 6. And then when you start going down Floyd Hill, you can see our viaduct structure take off there in the westbound direction.
So when you say a buffer, that's that small lane in between the express lane and the others.
Yeah, that small little.
Yeah, that's what they need
So-
on this end.
So then you can see westbound crosses over eastbound here, that's for constructability.
Oh, wow.
So it's, we call it a braid.
Sweet, okay. Glenwood.
And we really talk about flattening out those curves that you can see here with this big sweeping curve for what it is today. You go down to the bottom of the hill and it's a sharp curve.
Has this changed much from when people had the two options to pick?
It has a lot.
Cause I really looked at those.
In the environmental assessment, which had the tunnel option and the Canyon Viaduct, which was the preferred option, we had lots of refinements to it. It's funny you mentioned Glenwood because it's more Glenwood-esque, I think. The EA had twin viaducts as you go down, sweeping through the canyon, and these are at different elevations, which aesthetically are better. It also allowed us to cut out some structure, which is cost effective, and then there's also challenges with icing on structure.
You're on the wrong side of the road here.
You will never know.
No,
So then as we go around the corner here, we land back to grade before the in Valley Central City Parkway exit there. And as we keep going around the corner here, this is our big rock cut in the west section. Now, it's rendered so it looks like concrete, but that will just be a rock face, very similar to what Twin Tunnels did just on the eastern side of the tunnel there. So it's a rendering, keep that in mind. That's not gonna look like concrete, that'll look like rock. And you can see the riparian bench down there that pushing the highway into the mountainside a little bit opens up near Clear Creek. All right.
so back between kind of Hidden Valley and the bottom of Floyd Hill, the kind of far east end there. It looked like the six follow kind of the current where I-70 is.
That's, yes, great question, and you are correct.
Okay.
Yep, the new frontage road, Sixth Avenue will follow the existing alignment of I-70.
Is that video available anywhere?
It is, you can go to the Floyd Hill project, you can even Google it, and it's there, it's called Future Floyd Hill, but I will absolutely send you a link to the YouTube of that.
Sweet.
Hello.
Hi, Andy.
Was fighting with the charging station. Never worked.
So just to continue on here real quick, give you an update of what's happened in the last, I guess it would be almost 8 months now, since we started. So we started in July of last year. Lots of rock excavation that's happened on the project. It's a lot of walls that are going up that are what we call soil nail walls that are holding back the earth. And then we have sculpted shotcrete on the front of it, which is turning out very, very nice. You can see some of that as you move up the hill. We have also installed over 9 football fields of drainage pipe and over 20,000 square feet of shotcrete. Also, to get some benefit of our schedule, we moved the start of the Mountain Express lane in the westbound direction. We did that during mud season so that it wasn't affected during the peak times right now. And you also will probably see some work if you drive through there on the south side of Clear Creek. That is all the utility work. So there is power and communication lines that are currently aerial, and we are having them underground through there. So let's see.
So where's the bike path?
Okay, I don't know if I have a good rendering of it here, but the bike path is on the south side of Clear Creek today, and it's going to remain there. We're going to reconstruct it 10 foot wide in concrete throughout this section.
But from what I read in here, it's gonna be closed now for the next 4 years.
To 2026, so I wouldn't say 4 years. Okay. The next 3 summers, it will likely be closed. And so we are working with our tech team, with
Yeah.
Jonathan and others.
We have a issue task force coming up about looking at transportation options for bicycles through the corridor. It's kind of challenging because
Three
there's a
of
lot of
them.
cross-country folks that go through there and they just don't know that it's closed until they get there and then they're sitting in the bottom of the valley basically. But we've been working with them and looking at like Lone Tree's mass transit program, which is pretty cool. Just to try to see if there's a way that we can help make sure that people get where they need to go.
It's just too bad we get this done and now it can't be used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And it says
Portion that's
3 of the
closed
5
is-
years.
Yeah, the portion that's closed is just between Hidden Valley and US 6, so it's open and reconstructed pieces, it's just you can't get through. in
Right,
the-
but that was the idea of doing it all. was,
And we understand the
Yeah.
importance of that, and that's the intent of the ITF, and what that looks like to make sure that folks can get through here, can jump on a shuttle, or if there's a partnership with local bus transit option, that's what we're investigating right now, but the intent is by the summer season to have something stood up so that people can get through here. Because we recognize there's people coming across the country and
Nowadays,
utilize this.
There's still options potentially on the bench cut below 40 that we could extend the greenway later after the project's over, right?
Correct, and that is, yep, absolutely, that's the intent, is at some point that can be extended.
We're also working with the county to get funding from GOCO to finish Jefferson County, so it's kind of like a regional effort to get down to Golden. But if you think about kind of past permits, like when you're going towards the canyon, not Kermit's, whatever Kermit's is now. Yeah, there's a, right below US 40, they put in a bench kind of like where the old batch plant is over there.
Mhm.
And so that is a place that we can extend the greenway after this project. It's kind of a benefit of, they had to get access for large machines and we're gonna be able to put more trail in later. So,
Right now, if you're riding east, you'd have to go up 40, right? Like get to Two Bear and then go up 40 and through El Rancho, is that right? Because the greenway's not complete. So it probably coincides fairly well with when some of what Jefferson County wants to do.
Isn't it
Actual
complete
greenways.
in the sense of it's all connected, but it's not the,
there's one really bad
Plan.
section in the
Right.
canyon that's just gonna be really expensive. It's like $80 million or something. So to make a tunnel or something, something similar.
right,
Cause you can't ride Clear Creek Canyon now. If I could, I'd ride to Golden, you know.
It's gonna be amazing when it gets completed.
that project's that one's, yeah, isn't it like $1 million a
Right,
mile or
could be.
something?
I don't know if you're
That, I've said.
I wouldn't
it's
question
really
that.
strong. Yeah.
Get nice and aerodynamic, you know, good up to speed.
But to me, it just, I found it bothersome that now the part that we finally got done here, and now it's not really usable for 3 of
I
the
would-
5 years.
I would not say that, because I
Right,
believe that we have very viable
Right.
solutions,
Just trying to come up
whether
with-
it's an on-call shuttle or partnerships, to make sure that that doesn't happen. And we want those options to be like, okay, if you don't want to jump on a shuttle, there is a detour. It's not an easy detour talking to a bicycle user group, but it's there.
Mhm.
And then the option of a shuttle for this missing piece in the interim for those recreational.
So you guys are
trips.
sensitive to all that.
Mike Graber, who's
Great.
a county resident, he's a bike representative for the bicycle users group. He's
Working
been
on
like
this too.
super involved in all of that. So
Great.
Yep.
That's good.
Yeah, I never knew so much about bikes.
Yeah. And
Or
the
how much
passion-
they cost.
And I would agree that I work with a bunch of the guys that ride the bikes all the time, and I'm amazed at what they spend on them.
Or a bike
They
rack,
won't buy
I
new
didn't know how
ski
much a
boots,
bike
but they'll
rack
buy new
costs.
bike cards.
so, yeah, but we are in tune with that, and
Cool.
we do recognize that that is important, so.
Yeah, I think long term it will definitely be beneficial to bike groups. It's just in the short term, relatively, it creates some.
I know, when you sit
headaches
here
for
and think
folks,
of this
maybe.
project 4, 5 years. Sounds so long.
It'll go quick. So what we're really here is to talk about the west section, which I know on Monday we're scheduled to go before council. for a 1041 permit. So I want to highlight some of these pieces of it. Again, this west section is slated to start in March of this year. And it includes everything from Hidden Valley Central City Parkway to exit 241 in Idaho Springs. The improvements include those safety, flattening those curves. So that big curve where we saw that big rock cut just before the Veterans Memorial Tunnels, that's going to start later this summer. Adding that third lane in the westbound direction, reconstructing both bridges, both I-70 bridges over Clear Creek. And then some of the environmental improvements are the riparian bench. Once we get I-70 flatten that curve, that opens up areas to improve that section of Clear Creek. And also we are including a wildlife pathway under those new bridges that we are constructing at over Clear Creek. And then, yeah, thank you. And then also included in the project, now it's not in the west section here, but is that noise wall that we're covering here in just a second. And just to give you an idea of the change, this is with our back against the Veterans Memorial Tunnels looking to the east. And so for me, I always look and reference that transmission tower that's at the top there that you can see on both sides to see how much that's going to change there to really flatten those curves and make those safety improvements. So with that, Mandy, I will turn it over to you to talk a little bit about the noise wall that is planned for Idaho Springs, and talk about how we got from the EA to the refined design that we have today.
And I just look here. So the noise wall has been very popular and very a very good point of interest. A lot of resident interest in it. And the environmental assessment, which is the line that you're seeing now, showed a cost feasible noise wall to be added at East Idaho Springs. And those blue dots that you see there are the benefited receptors. It's generally those townhomes that are just to the east of 241. When we got into the Fonzie, so this was in 2022, then into 2020 or 2021 into 2022, we were looking at refinements to that wall and realized that we could get the same noise benefit by ending the wall at the overpass, and it was tricky to get the wall through the overpass. So the noise model showed it going through the overpass, but realistically, when we got to design, that didn't make a lot of sense. And so when we put there's already a pretty good noise benefit from that wall, so teaming it into the wall provided the same benefit. So we shortened the wall in that location, and it also helped us move the site distance as that exit. So when people were coming off of 241, you didn't necessarily want to be driving up against a wall. So businesses are the exit very well.
So it just goes to the bridge.
So it goes to the bridge, yeah. And so that's the we don't have the alignment there, but you can see that right behind the bridge is the wall just dead ends into the it's in the visualization there. Then we got into further design, and right where you're seeing this one's a little different. Where all of those arrows are coming together are a whole bunch of utilities, and they're really close to the road. So originally we had planned the wall to be aligned kind of just about 5 feet offset from the edge of the road, and there was that's pretty much right on top of water and sanitation lines, wastewater lines. So we moved the wall as close as we could behind the guardrail, close to the roadway, until that point where it's hard to see on here, but there's a darker line, that dark line that's right against the highway there. That's the place where we had a lot. The utilities are kind of, the utilities are kind of coming through there, the colored lines that are coming through the blue there, and they're getting really, really close to the road. So that was about as far as we could get the wall without major utility conflicts. So then we came up with 2 different designs after that. and that's what these aqua lines are. So one of them they go to that same point, that pink line puts a wall basically on top of a Jersey barrier next to the roadway. And then the other wall, which is another option, overlaps because you need to overlap the noise barrier in order to have the same noise benefit much closer to the creek. So after looking at both of those two options, the option they're both expensive to build and they're not very easy. Building a wall on top of guardrail, especially that tall of a wall, a barrier, is not a very easy option, but it was a better option. It's a little shorter, it's a little easier to build, and it has a lot less utility conflict. So that is the recommendation of the team, and if you go to the next one.
Yeah, just to highlight, the recommendation of the team is to do the option that has the pink there that is up against the road. We did, just to highlight, we did meet with Public Works wasn't there, but you had looked at it, and some of the feedback was look at extending that. So we are looking at extending that, the pink line a little bit, just in capture.
And this would be in the other permitting process. This isn't included in this.
Right, it's not in this package.
Yeah.
We're just a little past preliminary design, but not quite to 60%. So this is still somewhat of a concept, but the alignment works, the height of the wall works, the noise benefit works. And then that pink part, everything works pretty well up to the pink part. And the pink part, we're just confirming the offset for utilities, which it looked like the Public Works Director was good with the amount of space that was there. There's still about 9 feet, but we're still working on that to get the exact locations because the utilities are not perfectly well known. So we're going to do a little bit more work there. And then whether it could go a little bit farther east is another consideration. So that's still a little bit in flux, but in concept it works, and in concept it doesn't have utility conflicts that we were concerned about, and it also does provide a good noise benefit.
Is it not good keeping it offset like that? I mean,
It's okay, that one, because it actually doesn't have a gap. So the problem with noise walls is if there's a gap, then the noise goes through it. So you have to overlap it enough that you don't have that noise. But this one, because it's so close in the guardrail, the barrier is so there's not a lot of distance there. It's a couple feet. So we'll be able to have that be like a T. There isn't a gap. So this is the concept of the wall, kind of where it's going. That the blue line is this is from the noise model, is moving over, and you can see it's not a very big offset there, but that's where that pink line would be. And then those purple lines, the purple are the benefited receptors, and from a regulatory standpoint, benefited receptor is one that gets 5 decibel reduction or better. The yellow ones are at the end on this side are getting 4.9 and 4.8, so they're not regulatorily considered benefited, but for a resident, they're going to see basically the same level of benefit at a 5 decibel reduction. And then the one on this end here is at 2.9, which is 3 is where you really notice a difference. So they're still going to get a noticeable difference, just not a regulatory cost benefit one that would factor into the regulatory definitions for benefit. And then the 2 at the very end, those are stops along the greenway, and those we couldn't get benefits for under any of the different wall options, including the longer wall that conflicted with utilities.
Still helps that part of the greenway that's on the same side of the creek as
Yeah, for sure.
that part's pretty
Yeah,
rough right now.
The reason it's kind of an interesting way that the noise reduction, how you claim credit, because you're moving through there.
Mhm.
It's not a stationary piece. They don't count any of that as part of a reduction, but yes, it will be much quieter through that area. And it'll also be much quieter on the south side because you're gonna have the highway not right next to the creek. So there will be good noise benefits along the greenway. It's just they're not modeled the same way. So there's a couple of steps left to do. We're going to finalize the noise report. There's some design things we were just talking about with the concepts and making sure that those work, and then also the aesthetics of the treatment. So what you're seeing here is walls that are very similar to what you see in the rest of the corridor there. Colorado required a random reveal, vertical lines. They will be paneled walls, how tall the panels are and how they look, and if there's any variation to that, will all be things that will still work out through the technical team process and probably with an ITF as well. The other thing that we need to do is conduct a survey of the property owners to determine if they want a wall. And I don't think there's any chance that that will come back as a negative answer, but if it did, then we wouldn't provide the wall. So that, and the other thing that is notable here is that this wall is 14 feet high. We did also look at a 16-foot tall wall, and it had only marginally, it made a couple of the receptors, but the extra 10th of the decibel of reduction. And so the aesthetic difference between that, the cost difference between that, of having that tall of a wall with the same basic wall benefit, we're recommending the 14-foot wall.
Is the city gonna be able to have on the cosmetic side of it, what different options, not just the,
Absolutely, and we have talked about that in our tech
Okay.
team.
It's
One that
not
recent
bad.
came up is the noise wall that was installed at Silver Plume. It had a combination of the random reveal and mountain peaks in it, and it actually, I think it looks very.
did you see what they used to have there?
It
It looks
was,
like old tires.
oh, wow,
Oh,
we're not
for
doing
ye-
that.
For years and years, when they put it in, because that's the big way I drive every day. I'm like, what the hell are they building this for? And yeah, the one they've done now looks much nicer.
And that's an option. I think that's just what we need to continue to work through in our technical team of what that aesthetic treatment looks like.
I said we should get Coca Valley.
The what?
But.
Well, like Wheat Ridge has the wheat
Yeah,
pieces and yeah, so
Yes.
no, that's great. that
Well,
they're
the
gonna
other
work
thing that
with the
you can
city
do
on
with these
some of
walls
that
too is
stuff,
it can be a different treatment on the highway side and the resident side, so.
Well, I
That's
think you
something
want
we
the
asked-
highway side looking decent.
Yeah, well, some consistency there, so this type of treatment that you see in lots of other places driving through. You know, there could be a reason to have it be varied, but there could be a reason for it to be consistent. I think the county would probably vote for consistency, but you know, there.
we were asking for on the inside of the wall some maybe design considerations too, just so that we could apply like a graffiti proof coating and maybe have lighting, because it's gonna be a little bit of a dark and private area, so. I think you guys said, look, maybe we could work and talk about that a little bit more, so.
Absolutely. We just passed preliminary design, so all of those can be worked out in the
Great.
future, and we'll come back in the fall.
Yeah.
And report on progress.
May I say something?
That is
Hey, Uchi.
Uchi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you.
Hi. I wanted to ask them if they have considered doing a mix of natural buffer with the wall, or if do you guys ever do one or the other? Or if you would be willing to use green buffers like trees and bushes to like enhance the sound blocking capacity of that wall?
The vegetation has a nice aesthetic barrier, but it doesn't really provide a lot of noise benefit. And we would love to be able to do berms and do natural berms, but they take a lot of space that we don't have. We barely have space to put a post and panel wall. It would be great, and that would be the preferable thing to do throughout the corridor, but in order to get a 14-foot tall berm, you have slopes that go, we take up the whole highway, just putting a noise barrier there. So we don't have space to do that, but the other thing with we could make some considerations on landscape treatments and other things along with lighting too. I mean, there's still a lot of aesthetics to be worked out with what this wall, the final condition of the wall on the aesthetic side. So there's a lot of things on the table. And one of the things that is helpful for CDOT Region 1 is there's a lot of noise walls in the Denver metro area. So there's a lot a lot of examples to look at, and a lot of advancements in graffiti treatment, because that's a common consideration throughout communities that have noise walls. So we'll have a lot of options to look through there. But I think that the good news for the design team was that we found something that we could actually build, because I know people were, and we did want to commit to it. We did want it to work, and we found something that does work.
Cool.
Thank you, Mandy. So one of the things I want to talk about before we talk about some of our communications real quickly is just what to expect when the west section starts up here. And so today's a perfect example of it. Hopefully some of you have signed up for our text message alerts. We did have a rock blast today that went very well. And so in order to do that rock excavation, we will have many more of those coming as part of the west section. Same basic rules apply. We're looking to do those during those off-peak hours, so 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., Monday through Thursday, and then with the potential for one on Friday morning. Was actually out there for the blast today. The hold was actually less than 10 minutes, which was great. Traffic cleared very quickly. So we'll start seeing that again, and then the rock scaling as well this summer. And so that's a little bit more impactful because those are the full 20-minute closures, and we let traffic clear. We don't hold another time until traffic is completely cleared the queue, and then do another 20-minute traffic hold, and those can be up to 6 times per day. Again, in those off-peak hours, Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. We are meeting, and Emily will get into it a little bit more. We're meeting with all of the first responders. We relayed this information to them. We've gotten good feedback from them, including from some of the emergency responders here that are concerned about backing up traffic into Idaho Springs, and if we can potentially hold out farther, do 2 holds so that we don't gridlock Idaho Springs. And I think we're looking at those options right now as well. So
Yeah, because it does back up all the way to Fall River sometimes. I know when I come down there.
That lights the streets of town too,
Yeah.
which is kind of amazing.
So with that, Emily, are you on? Can you? Oh, there is a handout.
Yeah. You can
Commissioner?
do the question first.
Uchi?
Maybe it was previously.
Okay. Let us know if you have a question. Otherwise, Emily, take it away.
Sure. So, like Kurt alluded to, there are going to be some significant traffic impacts, although we are working to mitigate those with our traffic plans. But we are doing a lot of proactive communications. I heard someone mention the Veterans Memorial Tunnels and maybe living through the construction that happened there. And so building upon the rafting relationships that were built between CDOT and the Clear Creek Rafting Companies, working with them, looking at similar holds of the river when needed or allowing them to pass through before we hold traffic to blast. We did get connected with several leaders in the rafting community there, and we presented at the Colorado River Outfitters Association convention in November. And so that was a great opportunity for us to start letting people know what the impacts could look like. We're really focused on educating them about what's going to happen in 2024 so they can plan accordingly, but with also the look ahead of what's going to impact in seasons to come. We have a rafting specific frequently asked questions document that it was great. That document was informed from the convention. So a lot of Q&A there. We are attending the season kickoff meeting on March 14th, and we'll have a presentation there and can talk more in detail about what the summer is going to look like. And then again, coordinating through those traffic holds so that we can try to impact their operations as little as possible. And then just with general motorists and in local residents also fall within this, we've got ways to communicate with them, whether it's through fact sheets or media relations. We do a lot of presentations to stakeholder groups. So Kiwanis clubs and chambers of commerce and a variety of different community groups so that we can get information out that way. Like Kurt mentioned, text alerts is the best way to stay informed about the project. It gives more of that real-time traffic information. So we are encouraging people to sign up for those weekly e-blasts every Friday. We get out with information, social media, website updates, and of course, utilizing our VMS boards. And a lot of these are tools that I just mentioned that we incorporate with all of our communications. So website, eBlast, our project hotline and email inbox, that's where people can have more of a personal touch with a project and ask questions. Our project hotline also has a recording of what to anticipate for that week's traffic impacts. We know not everyone that lives in Clear Creek County or in Idaho Springs is online. So that's a good analog way to stay in touch with the project. Lots of meetings and events. And then we do communications with elected officials and also public information officers along the corridor, those PIOs. We've got Megan Heiler in Clear Creek County and a variety of other folks that help really push information out on a resident level. And then here are just some examples of our communications that we put out. One is an example of our text alerts, and the other is our social media that we post. And then I think, this might not be exactly for your group, but we do ask that our stakeholders help share information. So whether they share our social media posts on their accounts, we have this graphic right here that's an easy thing to post and help spread the word about how to stay informed about the project. So this is information that we're pushing out, again, mostly to those PIOs along the corridor so that they can help get information out.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
What's an eBlast?
It's just a weekly newsletter that we have go out, and it just talks about looking what's going to happen on the project, in the next week, highlights of different pieces. It's just a great way to stay informed of it, and it's very well done by our team, including Emily. So yeah, I would sign up for them. Anybody that is interested, please you can Google Floyd Hill Project. You can sign up for it all right there. To any residents that are interested in staying informed.
And Matt, or one of their colleagues, Matt, put in the chat the link to the video and the project website, so I emailed that to you too and Uchi already.
Thanks.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, I heard somebody in House Project on Keiko a week or so ago, the local radio station. That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I did, I think it was a little while ago, but did one update on it with Cindy Neely.
Nice.
Okay. We done?
Any other questions?
Yeah, how is the exit access during construction? Are they all gonna be still accessible during all of construction? Or will there be times where certain exits or on-ramps aren't accessible?
So generally speaking, we understand the importance of the corridor, and during those peak times, we want to make sure that everything is open. Which means no lane closures during the day, other than those traffic holds is the only thing that you see during the day. Most of the work that requires us taking a lane or a ramp will be done overnight. At least with Idaho Springs and exit 241, Colorado, I don't anticipate any closures needed for that during daytime hours. Some of the challenges that we're still working through is some of those connections at the bottom of Floyd Hill, and the challenges of keeping the US 6 connection maybe in westbound, and there might be a time or a duration that's closed for, but we understand that, there needs to be a good detour and things like that before we implement anything like that. So we're still working through it. I imagine there will be ramp closures, but we're trying to limit the impacts of those.
Right on, thanks.
And some overnight ones now, it's the 6, right? Not yet. No.
Might be
I think they're probably done. I get that.
Yeah, I think they haven't been very impactful, but I know they have been happening.
Yeah, I know we did for a while there, and yeah, we didn't get too many complaints or complaints.
I think the only complaint you hear is the blasts. It's more real time. It just says from 9 to 3. It's like, okay, I leave my house at 10, and you probably hear that all the time. Well, can't you say 15 minutes before if we're gonna do one? And Jonathan's laughing, that's probably the biggest complaint you hear.
Well, the other thing that's hard too is once they do that, it isn't a, I don't know, it backs up in unpredictable ways. So when they hold traffic, it holds longer than 15 minutes before it queues up.
Right, but that's, I know that's
We've
the
been
biggest thing people ask is.
Getting a lot of requests for the start of blasting, because it is a limited number of texts during the day, and there has been like maybe a changing preference that it would be better to have them when blasting, or when the closure starts, even though the end of the closure is a little bit more,
Today, they told you they were
Very
done
old.
and it was like 3:15, 3:18. Well, okay, you already told us it's gonna be closed, it's gonna happen between 9 and 3, but you don't know when. And I think that's the biggest request people had is like, okay, you're gonna do one, even if you got the text 15 minutes before it goes, where you hear people complaining about if they leave their house to a doctor's appointment, then all of a sudden they get caught in it. Or they would have left earlier or later or whatever.
And I know, it isn't exact. I mean, today, the one that went out at 8 said approximately 1 PM, which it was 1 PM almost to the T today. And then we did send one approximately 30 minutes before at 12:30. And then, yes, I agree that the 3 o'clock, or no, 1:20 said rock blastings are complete today.
the really big closure like last fall was because there was a significant amount of rock that came down in one of them. And it
Oh, that
made it
one, it was
longer.
closed
Yeah, I
for
got
a couple
caught in that.
hours.
Yeah, and that's like kind of unanticipated.
That one you have
That
no
was the day I
control
don't
over.
wanna repeat.
I bet.
We definitely heard about that one. We unfortunately gridlocked. I know
I felt
Springs.
I got stuck in it and was like, how did this happen?
You know what, my daughter she had to come up here and she was heading back to Denver. And she called me and she was just past the tunnels and she calls me and I'm sitting at my office, I'm up at Loveland. And she goes, Mom, what's going on the highway? So I get on CO Trip right away. I go, get off the highway. And she tries to merge over, to get off at Kermit's there. And, yeah.
US 6 was backed up, it was horrible.
She got
That was a
down,
terrible day.
she got through it, cause just
She
perfect
must have had
timing.
better timing.
Well, and I got on the website right away and could see what was, it's like, get the heck off the highway. Yeah, but
And
people
we-
sat there for a couple hours.
Yeah, it was.
We modified a lot of our crisis communications efforts and then to really make sure that folks, including key stakeholders, are informed. And I'll be sending out texts if that happens again and working with the schools and folks like that.
Now, to put you on the spot since you're sitting here, and then we'll get back to, if Dylan has to, how come when stuff goes on, all of a sudden some of the cameras aren't on?
I cannot answer that.
It's
I will-
it's
I
so
will take
convenient that all of a sudden,
I would bet it's
looking at-
because a whole bunch of people are accessing it at the same time.
oh gosh,
That would
no,
be my
If-
guess.
with today's technology, believe me, I can be on my
I build
phone.
websites for Oregon City, I would be.
But all of a
good guess.
sudden, that one camera is not working.
If
and-
there's like an accident or
And
something like that.
the
okay.
accident's at Bakerville or something, and the guy in front of you that's driving says, oh, Cindy, get off here, blah, 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 there's a wreck. You go to look at the camera and that camera's not on.
I will ask.
That happens a
I will
lot.
ask. That is a new one for me, so thank you.
It's so convenient. Cause we always look at the snow conditions coming down from the tunnel.
Yep.
Yeah,
Me too. You
yeah,
know,
I do
snow
too.
packed, is it wet, is it?
Yeah.
Yep.
How many idiots am I gonna see in the ditch? Okay,
It's a lot of good timelines, on there, and I know nobody has a crystal ball, but projects can often take longer than you think. I'm sure y'all feel pretty confident about it, but I'm gonna ask anyway, how confident do you feel that the timelines are solid and won't slip, or it might slip a little, or?
We have gone round and round with schedules on the project with Kramer, who's our CM, of, what is a duration for this, and I do believe that we can deliver the project in that amount of time. There's lots of variables associated with it.
Very
We could
difficult.
have some very bad winters, and then that can make it difficult to get it done in that amount of time. When we look at schedules and things like that, not to get too detailed, but there's like a warm weather calendar and a cold weather calendar that doesn't matter, and sometimes you're up against a window, right?
Mhm.
So paving for example, you usually want to do when it's 50 degrees or above, you can screw that a little bit with different mixes, but typically you want to do that in the summer, and then once you get to October, basically you can't do it anymore. And so, some of those, if you really dive into it, we're pushing some of those windows, those at the end of the season, that if we do get a lot of weather delays, stuff like that, like pushing paving or something like that, it could be the next season. It's the biggest concern.
Expecting one harsh winter, no harsh winters.
There is, I think, an average out number of days that we put in there for weather.
Sweet, thanks, man. I know that's like an impossible question.
It is, and it's a concern, right? You don't want to say, oh, we're gonna be done and out of here in this amount of time and come back and be like, no.
But you also don't want to say, well, it's gonna be open-ended. How could we ever know?
Correct.
Yeah,
So,
I get you.
yep. I do believe, looking at the schedule, there is enough time if we can just keep on the schedule that we have to get that delivered.
Has that been going well so far on schedule?
It has been.
Okay, great.
It's a very complicated project with lots of moving parts and major structures and lots of design challenges, but we keep working through.
Yeah.
The corners at the bottom.
Yep, the bridges.
So I think what I would benefit from is, do either of you and Uchi as well have any concerns with, any additional conditions, things like that, might, or other things that might just be beneficial for going next week to council for their end as well. Given you don't really need to make an action, but if you have recommendations or feedback or comments.
I think some of my concerns were addressed, and then I read through each of yours, which that was gonna be my question. Do you feel that all of them were met?
I do,
Yeah.
You brought up kind of the main concerns, I think, that were brought up, which is the bicyclist impact, which again, 3 years is not great to not be able to do it, but in the long term, a 10, 20, 30-year window, that it improves it in a lot of ways. And I think the benefits for riparian habitat are really great, and, the overall project.
And I know
That's
the water
achieved,
stuff through the watershed, and then the noise, all that stuff. I mean, that's common in every construction project anymore. And you guys put 2 water monitoring? Is that
So
what it
we
was?
are actively monitoring the water in Clear Creek upstream, and then there's one right by the restaurant down there at the bottom of the hill. We're setting up a work group that we're gonna talk about what that looks like, noting Aqua's concerns and try and really see what is this area, what is the impact from this project?
Yeah. And I know they've been working with that, so that's
Right.
something that's kind of out of
Right, well,
our
and I think
expertise.
when I'm reviewing this, I'm thinking of it as like a long-term project impacts rather than short-term, because obviously in the short term, there's blasting, there's delays to traffic and all of this, but in the long term, like Kurt mentions, it improves travel times potentially, especially with the frontage road, that's an important connection. It improves safety along the corridor, and that's really what I believe the 1041 review is trying to get at.
I agree with you on the focusing on the long term. I mean, short term is important too, but focusing on the long term, because 3-4 years sounds like a long time, but you'll be around for a long time after that. And then my biggest concern was I had just always heard it called just the new express lane, and I apologize, but I was unaware of the public transportation aspect of it, and I'm really glad to hear about it.
No, we want to spread that news, and I think that's something to highlight as part of the project, that there are other options out there. I mean, bus staying is another one, snow staying.
And they'll be using it as
Pegasus.
well, I would think, or the new lane, Mustang and stuff.
Busing will be able to use the new lane because it'll be full width.
Wonderful.
They can't use that.
But they have to
Express
get out
lane,
at the Mountain
yeah.
Express lane. That's the benefit to Pegasus. And
Exactly.
that's kind of the, forethought that went into that, is that can utilize that lane to zip up to.
How are speed limits monitored on those? Nobody, I mean, in those express lanes and toll lanes, they're supposed to go what, the posted speed limit, right?
Right, it's not a speed lane.
It's not,
Personally, I think we should just use the cameras along there and just mail out tickets, save a lot of,
I agree.
save a lot of
I agree.
dangerous interactions on the highway.
I mean, I got in it one time and I was
That's
sent my
way off.
toll.
Way off the.
But, yeah, yeah. You don't see postings in it where people think they're in it and they can just fly.
Yeah, it's not the Autobahn.
It's
So it's
scary.
actually a little, I think that there's been a lot of discussion about express lanes throughout the metro area, and one of the things that's interesting about the mountain corridors, people don't speed as much because it is so narrow that they feel unsafe.
Curvy.
I mean, they do speed, but not like they do
Not as much.
like I-25 between Colorado Springs and Denver, which is.
You can be coming down in, on Saturday and skiing traffic and those cars will go flying by you 80 miles an hour in the express lane.
Well, that just goes to show.
And it's scarier than heck.
Oh,
because
yeah,
it's
I'm
so
scared when
narrow.
people go 60.
Yes, yes. In fact, I get on the frontage road because it's ridiculous, yeah. And there's no enforcement of it. I don't know how you'd enforce it, you know, it's like you said, unless you had cameras like on the Autobahn, that's what it does, man. You go under one of those things, you get your ticket in the mail and you pay for it, yeah. But that's a long ways on, right? Okay, Dylan, did you have more stuff? I mean, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you both coming up and everyone who's on the meeting remotely. You know, I know this is not strictly required, but I think it's helpful for us to, you know, again, inform the public and get it out into the community before the proper public hearing council. So hopefully it's useful for everyone.
I believe in the process, and the more information that we can get out there to folks like you all, it makes it much better, because one of the favorite things I love about our tech teams and that we try and solve problems together to do that and try to do it the best way that we can, and that's based on informed decisions. You know, I really believe our tech team talked about the difference from what the EA was to what it is today and all those different refinements, and that's a direct result of all the influence that we have from our tech team. It's been a great process working through.
And it's amazing how many people ask you about this stuff, you know, I'm sure you guys, I mean, I get asked all the time, yeah.
That's why I was so concerned about the public transportation. I've had a ton of people ask me about that, so I'm really glad to be able to tell them.
Yep.
A good answer. to
Look at Pegasus, that parking lot's supposed to be constructed this summer at El Rancho, and that's another spot to jump on. I believe, is there a stop at Idaho Springs? I know there is.
Yeah, it's at the, basically at the rec center, that
At
lot at
240.
240. I've taken it both directions.
I was gonna
I've
say, it's
taken it to
amazing how
Frisco, I've
much
taken
it's
it to
used.
Union Station. It's,
I think we've had like significantly more usership here than they was anticipated originally, so.
it's like an on-call stop, so if you don't book in advance and no one's getting off or on, you couldn't just hop on it.
Oh,
But if you make a, you know, reservation, like even a couple hours in advance, it works really well. Cool.
We have a lot of students that work for us that come from other countries and they're so savvy, they know all this stuff, yeah. It's us older ones that haven't figured it out yet.
well, thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Hey
you.
guys, now that you're wrapping up, I just want to make sure to thank you for mentioning communication. It is a very important thing for our community. It, as you can see, know, learn, our community, our quality of life gets affected pretty heavily by this highway. So we appreciate you guys taking the care for the communication piece of that, of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for your continued support.
Okay. I like how you did this, Dylan. For each one, yeah.
Well, this one's pretty robust, but I have one next week for a certificate of appropriateness for the Preservation Commission. That's like equal length. Just feels like I do a lot of writing these days. All right, so I guess we'll just keep moving.
Yeah, we have a
You're welcome to
second
stay,
part
of
to the
course,
meeting.
but.
Thank you.
No need
Sorry I
to.
was late.
Appreciate you having us here today and
Anybody have an electric vehicle?
I do. Did you use this station over there?
That's what I tried to do, yeah.
There's another one, a charge point over here. And
Is
it's
it better?
free too, and it's way better. It always works. So next time, it's like right
Working is
behind,
my favorite thing.
it's by the
Free is
Robert,
even better.
it's right behind Bojo's where that little warehouse building is. It's like in
I was
the,
trying to find that one
Yeah.
earlier, but
It's kind of
it's
secret,
right off,
right?
yeah, it's like right off 15. If you're,
and which side?
it's on the south side, well, it's on the north side of the parking lot, on the south side of the Roberts Brothers Garage, which is like the little brick building that's in the middle of the parking lot.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
and let us know too if you wanna come out for a project tour and just see what's going on and be happy to provide that as well, especially when it gets ramped up this summer. So, yeah, again, thank you for having us today. And see you Monday.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And I'll be sure to send out links to everyone, like a better link like we did just at the very beginning, because I don't even have a good link quite yet, since I'm still relatively new with the city, so I'll try to get that to everyone who's on tonight.
Thank you.
Hopefully every week.
Appreciate it.
All right, so the only other item I had, I wasn't anticipating this being an incredibly long discussion, but you know, I'm new here, of course, and there's.
You're not new anymore.
I suppose, yeah,
This is all broken.
then.
You're all broken in.
2.5 months, so I guess that's not that.
You haven't quit yet, so.
No, I'm here for a while. You may or may not have heard, but there's a new city council member who was appointed, and that is in fact my wife, so. We're quite,
Sorry.
Which one of my questions on that one is the conflict in the sense of you're doing planning, she's on council, but yet at one point Carmen wouldn't let council be on planning.
But the same person?
well,
It's the same person.
I think the reason is that.
I know, I'm
Yeah,
just
so-
saying, those are the questions that have been asked to myself.
well, and I,
Whether I am agreeing with it or not, that
Sure.
was just the,
It also
Yeah.
seems we have to be aware that like there's plenty of holes in all of the commissions and boards and stuff, and we need to take.
We
people
also-
that are willing.
We had some pretty good conversation with Carmen beforehand.
Right.
There,
which
the,
I'm assuming,
really only the intersection would be like a case that comes to planning commission and to council.
Right.
And so I think that that's kind of like the agreement, and that's what they talked about the interview, is that she would recuse on something where there was a direct conflict.
well, and I'm not a decision maker, you know, I'm recommending approval based on criteria and all of that, and like,
I think it's a fine line, I'm just gonna say, because like you just said, if there is a conflict or you get that controversial thing, I remember times we've had controversial things where you've had law enforcement here and stuff, so yeah, you look at stuff like that, that's where you're gonna get those people around here that are gonna,
sure.
yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I can't imagine, like, I think of it as a scenario where even if, let's say I recommend approval on something controversial and it gets passed 4-3 and she's the deciding vote, that still means 3 other commissioners.
I was gonna say there were
voted
4
in
deciding
favor
votes.
of it. And so in that case, it's, you know, it might be a conflict of interest on my end if every time, you know, 6 people vote in favor of my recommendation and she votes against it, for example.
I look at it as now you're really into the community.
Right.
Well, then we-
And you're staying.
Then we better really make sure that the hotel motel regulations are good.
Yeah, so anyway, this is kind of obviously, no, I agree. That's true. So, you know, of course, city council kind of, you know, directs project planning and priorities and all of this,
Right.
but I think you all play, and Uchi as well, of course, is up here, plays an important role in
I'm here.
and working on projects and, you know, make recommendations and all of that. So obviously, everything that I work on this year also ultimately comes from council in some ways. But I think it's good to start now to say, like, if you all have feedback on what you might like to see done, what you might like to recommend to council for consideration and those sorts of things, might be on this list, might be something else. I thought of another item, which is potentially creating a duplex or condo planning process to allow like a current single-family home or a lot that would allow multifamily to be actually split and have two conveyable units, because right now we don't have a process for that.
I think
So you
it's,
could,
would be based on the zoning, wouldn't it? Right.
yeah, but like the problem right now, or maybe it's not a problem, I don't really know, but like if you created a duplex, which you'd be allowed to do, there's not a process by which you could then split that duplex into two and subdivide them or sell them separately. You create a duplex, but then you have to rent one or something like that. And so a lot of other communities have process by which you create a party wall agreement, split the lot that way down the middle and convey the lots. And similar to like condos, potentially in the historic district, or not a perfect example because the 4 Points project is an opportunity zone and you can't sell units, is what I learned. But theoretically, if someone wanted to do a 50-unit complex that's townhomes, they don't have a process to split each one and have separate ownership legally at the city level, is my understanding. So I didn't put that on there, but
So add that one.
Would be interesting.
I added that.
I thought that was a great list.
No kidding, if we worked on all of this, that'd be amazing.
Right, well, and council has mentioned a lot of these things themselves, parking, we've talked about quite a lot with fee and lieu, but then, we had mentioned in a couple, like last meeting about that whole like after hours thing and shared parking standards and all of that, so.
How did the fee and lieu go with council?
It ultimately
It
was
what?
just continued essentially or tabled because they kind of want to revisit it in some other ways that, like whether it's achieving the goals that they really want and whether it's like an easy fix or a much more complicated fix, I think.
So what does that mean? It just stays the way it is right now?
Yeah,
For now, yeah,
Right.
I actually did a little work on this yesterday, but I'll just say that we're actively looking at ways to change the program comprehensively, is what I would say.
To what? I mean,
What that
do they want
exactly is
more out
gonna
of
look
it or
like.
less?
A few ideas were thrown around, like almost like monthly fees that you're paying to rent a spot. We're just trying to get the most, I guess, the most fair and sensible way to do it. The other businesses that have taken advantage of not having a change of use were also a bit of a concern. So there's, I think, some
You had
moving
mentioned
parts.
some equitability things to the program, maybe very basically when we were in our last work session, and I think that's an important consideration.
It'd be easy to accidentally be inequitable.
Right, so I think there's council wants to,
What other kind of goals? I've heard that kind of mentioned a couple times, they want to make sure it aligns with their goal. I remember that was one thing that was a little difficult about our whole big discussion of it last time is we mostly seem to be like, oh, it seems pretty okay. It's like the council has different goals and wants us to come up with something, but I didn't feel like I had a good grasp on what their goals for it were.
right,
I almost think you should do a work session together.
That might be
be
cool.
like a joint work session.
Yeah,
But
I
do-
mean, because kind of the direction we were going was it almost came out to like being the monthly rental.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that was kind of where we landed between the last work session and then the meeting where we're gonna have a work session with them, is like maybe staff didn't really understand the nuances. So I think that's still kind of being worked on, like you said.
Okay.
yeah. We had a meeting with the mayor like a week or two ago. Melissa. And I think there's a better idea of what is desired. And it didn't seem like there's a huge rush, but it's on my list to kind of put together.
That's great. It's easy to get lost in details. It's always good to step back and say, wait, what are her goals here? So,
Right, yeah, so I know we spent quite a lot of time on that last meeting. But anyway, more to come, I think, but that will certainly be coming, you know, as has been mentioned in planning commission, it's also been mentioned at council, is the regulations around hotels and motels and long-term occupancy spaces and all of that. It sounds like that's been a somewhat priority here. Certainly is a priority at council as well, putting together some more comprehensive and clear standards and differentiating uses, and along with that, also potentially creating some new uses for employee housing, like dormitory shared amenity style housing that maybe isn't, you know, full units, maybe isn't like, you know, maybe is like this kind of hybrid approach that some other places like Telluride and Crested Butte and Aspen are doing for workforce housing for seasonal employees. Both on a big scale. There's like one example I saw that's like a 50 unit, almost like a college dorm, has like shared cooking spaces and things like that. And some single occupancy, some quad, things like that. But then you could also potentially do it in a 4-unit sort of thing, you know, on a small scale. So, but yeah, and then, you know,
Sign regulations again, oh my God, that one's a tough one.
well, I think the key one with that I've heard is more about clear enforcements and kind of priorities on like what's important to enforce and whether, as a result of a lack of enforcement or inconsistent enforcement, whether
as far as
changes are
like,
needed.
It's a little
as far
bit,
as what kind of signs?
the sign code is very
Just in general.
extensive and it's good, but the thing is that it is practically impossible to completely enforce everything in there. And that raises the question whether or not we should look at how we can, what the goals for that sign code should be, I think, and like making sure that we can build a code that is enforceable. One of the big issues we have is with temporary signs. And then like, is a mural a sign? Like there's a lot of questions like that. Like if a mural involves an element that is just like a pictorial element, that's probably not a sign. But then if it has like a representation of a letter, does that become a sign? And that's a really big question we have.
For the business.
Yeah, and then downtown historic district, there's different rules for signs down there. We have digital sign rules, we have, there's a
Lighting.
whole host of things in there and it's complicated.
And lighting is a
Yeah.
big question in general.
Oh my God,
that
we
I've heard
worked on
come up,
that thing. We haven't worked on it in a long time, but where we're at is, man, that took us a long time to
It's
get.
not bad at all, it's just
Yeah.
temporary
It's
signs
the
also,
enforcement part of it.
yeah. We've got a lot of temporary signs that have maybe overstayed where the temporary sign is.
Right, and the question is that a problem? You know, if you have a big vinyl now hiring sign, for example, is that something that is worth enforcing versus, you know, certainly, I guess, if you're hiring all the time, you know.
Well, it's a
advertise
temporary
that,
sign.
but, you know, it's not a
It
temporary
means- Right,
fit, like it's essentially now it's become quite, because I think a temporary sign requires something like 30 days or less. It's like a kind of short term allowance for that to be up, and then it's supposed to be down for a certain period of time, and
What makes it hard to enforce? Is it that it's complicated? Is it having the labor to enforce it or?
It's partially both. It's also being able to see when it happens and then to be able to write enforceable tickets that can stand up when they need to. And so then there's also a question about. It's really a question about enforcement in general, is like, how far down that road are we willing to go as a community? Because you really are punitive in some ways. And that needs to happen. I mean, that's a part of what we do and it's needs to happen. But there are questions about that kind of thing, and that you want to make sure you're doing it in a thoughtful way. So we would like to just, I think for Wonder is the person that it really mostly affects, because she's responsible for kind of making everything happen. And so, you know, she's not really able, it's more just a matter, like Dylan said, of like making sure that when we do take an enforcement path, we're doing it for a good reason and we're gonna achieve an outcome that's good for the community.
and that we're doing it consistently.
Yeah, of course.
And so, you know, maybe this one's not quite as high a priority as housing and parking and that sort of thing, but still something that I think would benefit staff and potentially the community. That's why that's not there.
What's the cell wireless infrastructure facilities? I don't, I'm not familiar with that at all.
So, like, I guess there's a number of things on a very large scale, would you say, like, next to the fire district, the big tower that was built. You know, when you're building a tower like that, and then also when you're making additions to the tower, change to the tower, all of that.
They don't come and get approval or anything.
Yeah,
Is it
we would
state
just,
precedent?
Yeah, we've always been at their,
right,
But it's
essentially
supposed to-
just get a building permit, and if it meets building
It's
permit
like-
standards.
Bigger than that though, too, because state passed a new law a couple of years ago, and we were supposed to do this then, but basically allows a wireless company to install any infrastructure they want on any city-owned property that they want to install it on, essentially.
Mhm.
And the only thing we can say is whether it's safe. And so that means like light posts, anything. And then 5G antennas, there's a really high density that's required to have a 5G signal in a 1 mile area. So it's like almost like 100 antennas, I believe. And so we have some possibilities of, there are some regulations you can do about what small cell infrastructure looks like, because it typically involves a cabinet and then an antenna structure at the top of a pole where you get the thing. So it really benefits our community to have that 5G signal, but at the same time, we do want to make sure that it happens in a way that's controllable. The other thing is that applicants have the ability to batch apply for those permits, and we can't, and it's like on a 14-day shot clock basically to say whether or not they can be approved. And so I know, Nick, that your firm has worked on this a little bit. I know Carmen has done some small cell stuff. And also there's this thing called CCUA, which is a utilities alliance. And they do have a couple of like programs that works pretty well in other communities that we could build some things off of. We were working on this at Planning Commission right when I started, when Nina was here, and then when Nina left, it kind of just dropped off. And so we may potentially already have like some work that we've done that we could
same with the lighting stuff.
Yeah.
We had,
dark
we had
side.
done quite a bit of stuff on that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I've dug up, like on all of these subjects, I've dug up a little bit, and then the question is, you know, a while ago, so our priorities the same, is there new, you know, has new technology come up that needs to be addressed? Do we need to look at things perhaps in different ways?
The lighting one, man, we were so close
I
on
feel
that
like
one.
like we actually had an ordinance.
Yeah,
What was the gist of it?
It was a dark sky
the dark
ordinance.
sky.
That's great.
Yeah.
Was that
That'd be
just
wonderful.
for commercial, was that right, or was
It
that for residential?
There was some like restrictions, general restrictions, I think, but it was more targeted towards like the big interstate. The McDonald's sign was like the impetus, I think.
Right,
And it also included. Didn't it include where if they build the 35-acre lots up on, had to do with that too?
Yeah, I remember that too.
Yeah,
yeah, I know from like,
the shading and the view and, yeah, it had to do with a lot of that stuff.
and I can imagine how that would be potentially important with some of the, like if the cable car project comes in, you know, the lighting which associated with that.
And I think
would have
that's where we
impact.
started it, is
Um,
right when that came.
But yeah, I know from other communities I've worked with and near, the hardest thing to enforce is residential lighting. Because people will, once that's in, if you're like, every residential fixture has to be dark sky compliant.
Yeah.
And neighbors call every day to complain about their neighbor's light because they now have something to point to. And it's a nightmare, but it also is good because, you know, when you walk Main Street Breckenridge, you can see all the stars, which you can do here as well.
Well, when you make a big change like that, I mean, it's like, it can be tough, but you gotta start somewhere, and when you start enforcing or start changing, that's gonna happen, you know?
Absolutely, yeah.
But that's not to excuse it or say it's not a big deal.
Who was here 4 years
Commercial
ago?
stuff, I think. is
It was
really
Alan.
important
Alan.
because that's where you get a lot of.
He wanted to be able to use
Most of
his
it has to
telescope,
come
I remember that very.
Maybe just streetlights in residential would be good too.
Mhm.
Have
Yeah, because the streetlights on Wall Street, East Wall Street are pretty bright
Yeah, and not shaded at all.
and like right above my upstairs window.
And I have a neighbor that is definitely, no, he has definitely never shot a light out with a BB gun. It's definitely never.
See, and we
done that.
say our lights aren't bright enough up in our neighborhood, like, bam,
Yeah, it's really dark up there.
yeah, it is.
I think there may not have been a residential component.
Right.
Maybe it was on
Yeah,
new
'cause-
stuff, like I think we're gonna add it to the,
I saw some stuff there. Yeah, new build would make a lot of sense because that's
Yeah.
something you could review with a building permit, you know, you require like a photometric plan.
Did Alan leave all his work here?
I've seen some lighting background stuff. I've not looked too detailed into like the small cell infrastructure facilities as a comparative thing, but I've looked at lighting a little and I think there is some background.
Yeah, I thought there was some stuff, and I thought if we did have a couple of different ordinances and there had been samples of other communities and stuff.
Right, and I plan to, because I know this one, I know signs, I know some of these other aspects that's been talked about at work session and at meetings and things like that, so I can, you know, easily pull those packets and get some of that background in there as well, which is nice, but until, you know, haven't done so quite yet because direction hasn't necessarily been super focused on it. Let's work on these things and, you know, first half of the year and all that.
there's one more thing that's on your calendar. The IHOP project, the housing project, the initial review for the planning is pretty much completed, and Dylan and I have to do the first review for the draft. But that draft would need to come to planning commission too, to look at and see what you think of the recommendations there.
Which one is that?
That's for that innovative housing opportunities planning grant that we got, where they were looking at our code about ways we might promote affordable housing.
That's right.
And so it would be like some sample ordinances potentially that could, and she did this impact analysis to say like what maybe a ordinance about ADUs might create in terms of new housing and things like that. And so what we would probably want to do is just review that report once it's ready. And then if any of those ordinances you guys wanted to adopt, then that would be a process too.
Yeah, I think that would be a work session item once that report is actually to us, because they've submitted now to us the countywide
Yeah.
draft.
Who did that one?
It's a group called Capelli Consulting. And so they are part of the subcontractor to Williford Housing, which is who did the plan.
Is that the one the guy was interviewing people or called?
Yes.
Okay, I know who you're talking about, yeah. I wouldn't come.
So I think, you know, there's a lot to come. I tried to take a lot of this from conversations that we've had with the planning commission, but a lot of it's from staff, and from council as well. So I just want to make sure before I go to council and then, you know, push it, you know, to get direction that if there's anything you all are very keen on, you know, it gets.
Yeah, I mean, like we chatted about before, the long-term stays at the hotels and motels seems really important. What's the gist of the discussion for short-term rentals?
Well,
I mean, I know there's a lot to talk about there, but like, you know.
sure, so we haven't really talked in too much, like, we haven't gotten any, like, from council necessarily, like a big push to change. I think in general, it's working, but I know there's a few decisions coming, like, at the federal level and regionally, that may impact our regulations, either for the good or the bad.
To try to update them. at that point.
So I think since we, you know, we're kind of in a good situation, in my opinion, as opposed to a lot of
Mhm.
resort communities and non-communities, because we have very restrictive regulations that have been in place kind of from the start, as opposed to trying to put much stricter regulations on later. But so it kind of gives us a point of strength where if we want to maybe try to let the short-term rental go away or tweak things, it's not this incredibly issue in the same way. So with kind of so much up in the air at the state level, at the federal level, it's something that might be
When will those rules come through? When are they?
tough to say.
It's not,
Yeah, it's like working through
how are we
courts.
doing on our enforcement of them?
We are doing okay. We probably need to, just in kind of general policy, look at our fees for what we charge for a license. They're relatively low. And one of our challenges is we don't have like any of the software that is really useful for finding short-term rentals. And so we've been exploring whether we could like increase our fees so we can get better enforcement software. Enforcement is something we're gonna work on. It's a goal for the city this year, and we need to just figure out some structures because there's a lot of pieces, because it's not only Wonder noticing and sending a letter, then at some point PD needs to get involved, and once PD gets involved, they need to make sure they have whatever they need to write a citation in the court for appropriately. And then when it gets to court, the prosecutor needs to know what's happening in the policy and all that kind of thing. So there's a lot of coordination that goes into it. But ultimately, I think we know where short-term rentals are operating for the most part.
I have a new one for you,
Yeah,
by the way.
okay, we can put it on the
friends
list.
stay there and it's like, no.
Well, we'll stick it on our list.
I think the other thing that's tough sometimes is like, our current regulations require that you are a primary resident and you rent out your primary residence. But it's very easy to kind of get around
Yeah,
that
that's true.
regulation. And so you still get these, I think the intent of the regulations were, it's like a partial home rental, you rent your basement out, you rent your home when you're out of town or on vacation, that sort of thing. But how it actually works is like someone changes their license and things like that. And
Well, that's how the,
license and then-
that's how the whole industry was pitched originally.
Right, and so the question is like, how do we get that enforcement in place? Do you like do away with the primary resident requirement, but keep it still at 15 licenses? You know,
Exactly, I
like,
mean, that's
does
where,
it, what's the harm if you have kind of a local agent on site to respond or in the community to respond, you know? So those are the sorts of things where equity comes into play again, like if something comes up that, because I heard it, I think it was in New Orleans a couple of years ago or something, there was a challenge based on like equity, and saying like, you know, just because I don't live in the community, like, why does that mean I can't have a license, you know, like.
well,
So,
our leverage is the 15, so go for it, but
right,
we've got 15, if somebody gets bumped off, then next one in line, so.
That seems like pretty bulletproof at this point,
Yeah,
I would say, right?
15 is very defensible.
We
Yeah.
recently had a challenge to our ordinance in the municipal court on grounds of unconstitutionality, and at least the municipal court judge agrees that at the moment, the case law supports our ordinance. So,
So,
What are the big rule changes that, you know, y'all are talking about without having to get into too much detail, but I'm just curious how it might affect us and what they are. If you know.
these residency
The
requirements and how they relate, there's kind of two different main cases talking about, do you have to be
full-time
does the
resident.
owner have to be a full-time resident
Mhm.
and be the licensee? Or can, like ours, a owner have someone be in their property, that person be the full-time resident, and then that person can hold the license?
Very interesting.
I think that would be an easy thing to change, because I
That's
think,
what it is right
yeah,
now.
we would be open to probably taking that off of there, and you still have your rules, you have to have an on-site person within how many, what did we have, 3 hours or something like that?
60 minutes even.
Yeah,
I mean,
and then the main thing would be, we only give out 15 licenses.
Right.
That's the common approach,
Yeah.
but I feel like
But yeah, the fact that we already have 15 from like obviously we may or may not have more than 15 folks operating like a short-term rental, and that becomes the enforcement side and bulking that up policy.
Very difficult to prove they're operating, because you can't really entrap them, and you can't, you know, like, it's just difficult to say for sure that they're operating, that's where we've had a
Well, they're
challenge.
advertising, or,
Yeah.
I mean, I looked up the one and there it is, it's on
Right,
VRBO, and they were staying there, and it's like, no, they're not the city, but yep, they're doing it, and they're advertising it full.
we've been,
Yeah.
another thing that the state is talking about passing potentially or trying to pass is, or maybe it's actually requiring like sites like Airbnb or VRBO to police like data on operation, and then it becomes a matter of having the capacity to get that data, and then, because then it's kind of ironclad saying. So I think that's at the state level, right?
Yeah, there's another state bill about requiring them to put their license number on their ad, which would help.
We had talked about that
Yeah.
too, that they had to.
The license number with the city, that
Yeah.
Yeah, it
license.
has to be posted on the
Are they
ad.
1 through 15?
Yes,
That's
I'm
awesome.
pretty sure. And we have some requirements they're supposed to post on site now. It's just, it's one of those things, it's like.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of like, there's just a lot of things that go into it.
There you go.
And the hardest part is the enforcement,
Right.
finding the time. I know when you
Yeah.
first started, I mean, it was kind of fun. You sat here and you
Yeah.
could look them up
It's like
and you'd
hunting.
call you up and say, hey, I found another one. And
Yeah,
we'd send them out a letter and stuff, but yeah, that takes time to do too.
it's definitely a divisive and controversial issue,
Mhm.
especially, well, nationwide, but in Colorado. And in this particular I-70 corridor, I think, and so, I would certainly want to be careful not to do anything that would make the situation worse for the
Mhm.
city, but there's probably opportunity to potentially to make it better, but we haven't really talked to council about that at all, whereas some of these councils.
Well, and until
Talk a lot
these
more.
laws change, I guess it's like, I mean,
Right.
if anything, we'll have to lax on the residents and stuff, but.
Now, do you want to put something in order here, or you just wanted more input on if there's more, or?
Well, I think, yeah, if you have anything that you kind of can identify as like, here's the top things, I'm happy to kind of rank it a little bit, but just this discussion has, I think, given some feedback in that sense, and if there is anything else, that's, I think, even more key, is to say like, okay, weren't even, that wasn't even on the radar, but it is important.
No, I think it's the hotel motel, the licensing and that with housing. If that's kind of different than affordable housing regulations, it's more, the different licenses that the property owner should have.
Yeah.
And then that would lead into the dormitory, because we do have properties in town. One I can think of on the top of my head that Jonathan and I have been not working on, but the potential of something going there, but because we have no regulations,
Right,
nobody wants to purchase anything.
right.
And we don't have a whole lot of places where anything can be built, so it's not even.
Well, and I know it's tough right now because like hotel, if you're approved as a hotel or motel, like our definition says it's supposed to be for transient populations, which is defined as, in short-term rental at least, is defined as 30 days or less. So once you occupy that hotel room for more than 30 days, it's slightly different, I suppose.
Mhm.
Per code should be slightly different. And so maybe establishing it more as this like dormitory or shared housing sort of standard
Yep.
that has basic life safety standards, basic occupancy standards. for
Then it
those
lets us
purposes
know
is
what
important.
the properties are being used for.
Right, and I don't know, I mean, we're not far enough along to say like, well, does it make sense to get like a temporary seasonal allowance as a dorm style housing, and you have to do a life safety inspection to make sure those rooms that are used.
That's
and in the
exactly what
summer
they're
you do
doing now,
hotels.
though. It is seasonal.
Right, and I don't think we do any life safety now. Or like assess occupancy and, if there's 10 people in a 200 square foot room.
We talked
that sort
about
of
all
thing.
that.
So,
How did you guys do occupancy on that side?
Well-
Was it through fire code or size or?
so Summit County government has an occupancy standard that's like one person per 300 square feet of dwelling units.
Hmm.
But they didn't yet have standards for like shared amenity dorm style housing either.
Okay.
And I think Breckenridge similarly, obviously I didn't work directly with Breckenridge, but like a lot of communities up the mountain have now purchased like hotels and are renting those out. And
That's what we
obviously
did.
they're doing like a hotel room max of 2 or 3 people. And so it's maybe higher than like if you actually have bunks and things like that. But now resorts has bunk style housing all over the state and country. So there's probably reasonable standards that make the situation more enforceable for us and potentially better for those residents.
No, yeah, we definitely should, because I think it's better for the city to, well, the benefits of it, whether it's a difference in the fees, and then knowing what the properties are doing. Yeah,
Well, and then, you know, I mean, once you add something to standards to a code, there's potential for reuse of property, redevelopment that maybe gets at a more, you know, wide-ranging redevelopment purpose that's maybe a specific norm style housing thing rather than adaptive reuse of existing infrastructure, you know, in the long term. Until you have a right standard for it, you can't really have someone think about it.
Well, and one of the things that makes all these housing issues hard to talk about is they all bleed into each other. So it can be really hard to stay on one, because they are all related, and one idea could solve multiple issues or vice versa. So
Right, and I'm wondering if this
it's really
IR
hard.
report would be good, get the, you know, the ball rolling. Yeah.
That's been,
Because,
yeah.
that'll have some recommendations, and we can maybe roll some of these other elements that it leads into it pretty easily.
When that comes out, we should have a pancake party.
I've been wanting to do that for like the last 2 years, and if we don't, I'm gonna be so sad.
Let's do it.
Okay,
You know, I wonder what Georgetown's doing too, because I know there's places up there doing the same thing, that they're renting out long-term now also. And you see a lot of it just now during the ski season, but
You
not
know,
so much in the summers.
one issue that's not on the list that I certainly had people asking about, and I don't know if it's a planning issue or not, it might not be, but I've certainly had a lot of people asking about it because I know I'm on commission, is enforcement of like snow removal in front of, on the sidewalks in front of businesses around town.
We have-
Some folks are just horrible about never doing it.
we do. We have a regulation about it.
Yeah, I know.
We try, Zach does, our enforcement officer, he does go around and do the community education about that. And I think that our regulations are probably set up the way we need to, but it kind of gets to this whole thing we're talking about figuring out a way to do enforcement in our community that is valuable. And so, we don't want to have bad outcomes too. Like, it's really important that we think about the just what happens in.
Is Zach under you
world.
guys or
PD.
PD? See,
Yeah.
and that's the problem too, is PD should be enforcing it too, not just Zach. And the same with vehicles that you see parked that don't get moved, which I was gonna ask about. Oh gosh, what was the name? Over here at the rock shop. The past,
Mark,
Maggie,
Maggie.
yeah, Maggie, last name. Her that pickup's been sitting there for a year and not ever moved. I don't know, that's prime parking there too, but I don't know, enforcement of that there again. It gets dumped on Zach and then Zach only can do so much.
Right.
Yeah.
It does make sense, it is good to have a like code enforcement, be like an deputized employee who can
Oh, yeah,
actually
that's a whole
issue
mess.
citations, because a lot of
There's
places
one
don't, like, I
One
could
on her own
give
private
someone a
property,
ticket.
they won't let her take it
I
off.
could just, you know, bother them to death, I guess. And like 80% of people or 90% of people
City can do.
try to get into compliance, but if
Compel
you found like a legal
Towing
apartment,
company to go and
they're
do
not
it.
gonna rip out their.
Hey guys, I can't follow when there's more than one conversation going. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Yuji. Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, so back to priorities, the hotel motel, I think we all agree on that one, and, what was the other, oh, the light one, probably could go pretty quick. The parking, we seem to be already working on.
Richie, do you have any thoughts on priority or on things that aren't on the list?
Thank you. Yes. I think priority for sure is housing. I think we could put priority things like the parking and lighting regulations, mostly the parking that is so fresh and we've been working. I feel like we're almost there, I think, although after hearing about the council session last time, maybe not so much, but I feel like we might as well push through and make it happen. And same with lighting regulations. This might be a little trickier because hopefully there's some, trail of documents left by Alan that can be helpful to him now. What else? The other stuff, yeah, housing in general, kind of hotel, motel regulations that are, it kind of, in my mind, is like a housing issue because we've been talking about it. And that's kind of how it started, the whole conversation about it. I know that the other things are not important, but I just figure I'll focus on telling you the ones that I think are the highest priority.
Yep.
And from the second list below, the city initiated housing development opportunities, I think that's key for sure, of course, on our housing thing.
Right, and a little bit of background on that is we have a number of like small sites throughout the city that we're starting to potentially be developing. We met with an architect firm on 2 sites not that long ago, and so we're starting on that, but there's more work to be done on identifying some of these other sites and infilling where possible.
So are those like city-owned sites or those privately owned sites that the city is kind of just trying to get the ball rolling, or?
It's a combination. There's a number of sites, they're small, it might just be a city lot, like a lot that's been vacant for 100 years, but the city has owned it the whole time. It's like, can you do a 4-plex or a duplex or even just one property? But then there are a few partnerships that might turn into something that we've kind of started working on. One of which I think we briefly mentioned was like a potential annexation on 103 in the cemetery. But there's some other opportunities like that maybe aren't super far along. The other thing I do want to note is we'll probably start comprehensive planning efforts at some point this year. It might just be kind of to get the ball rolling, but we kind of need to identify, is it just an update to the current? Is it a full overhaul?
Have you written one before?
I've been part of the process, but I've not done like, I think it would be, if we just needed to edit goals and kind of rearrange things and kind of do a minor update, maybe that's something
We do have
to do in the house, but
We did put money in the budget to start this process, so we have, I want to say we have $50,000. I think, like Dylan said, we have a lot of resources that we could probably do some of this work, but I think it might need to be just reviewed by planning commission first. And look at it, because a lot of the goals in there have been met or are just determined infeasible, and there's a lot of things that are just, it's crazy how different some of the, just where we are now is from where we were in 2017. So there could, I think you can make a case either way, but I think that you guys might want to review that before we really determine the path.
right, and we have a few other things where maybe we can get some, like, I don't know if anyone was involved in the last ULI, the Urban Lands Institute TAP process. What's TAP stand for again?
Technical advisory panel.
So they like had people come in to review parking, and that's kind of how the parking program started. But there's been talks about maybe doing something similar to that or another TAP to kind of build on that and kind of be a informal sort of kickoff their comprehensive master planning. And so that'll come at some point this year. I think you'll certainly be involved in some capacity with that.
When was the last time the plan was comprehensively updated?
2017.
Okay.
So it's sort of,
It's just about time.
and like
Didn't
John
Alan
had said,
update it?
Yeah, he wrote it. We didn't, our
Yeah,
last one was really old before that. And so I think you guys pretty much redid everything. And I think,
that's why I was asking if you wrote one, because
right,
sure, it's gonna be more his style than, whoever does it every time, yeah.
right, and so, yeah, if it's like a completely new plan, is that the capacity of small staff, I'm not sure, but, like.
Your students, yeah. Could
And,
be anything.
like I know well, Summit County is doing it right now, and I think they're like at $250,000 this year that they're spending on it, so.
Really?
The idea of
No, we're not doing it that way.
I think
you often
that
get what you pay for.
we could probably, we have the capacity to do some work. It's just about how long it would take. And comp plans have a lot of community engagement that happens, like they can take 18 months, no problem.
Yeah.
So getting some of the initial pieces done for this year would be a really good goal.
And if we just did an audit really to say like, all of these goals have been met, or these goals can't be met, or yeah, these goals are still important, let's make sure they're addressed in the next 7 months.
Given how big of a process it can be, it sounds like that one might be a little urgent to get started on.
Since we did budget a bit.
Isn't part of the 5 mile plan, would be
That needs to be
to
updated as well.
engage that at the same time, I
Yeah,
mean, because.
That's been needing to be
Yeah.
updated for like a couple of years. The other thing that we really need to do that could be a part of initial push for this, is we need to do like a code review. Because there are some things in code that don't work as intended, like that, you know, we need to look at the ordinances that are there and just kind of audit and make sure things are pointing in the right direction, is not missing tables and things like that, because there are some issues. So that's another project that we've talked about a little bit that could happen.
So anyway, I think I'll keep playing busy.
Okay.
Well, I think this is great. Uchi, do you have anything else? I know it's been harder to contribute since you're not sitting here and we're all looking at each other.
No, all good. Working on my patience is kind of hard, but all good. No, I think that's it. Thank you so much for all this work. I think this list looks really good.
No kidding. Thank you.
Well, I hope I know this meeting, I think we're pretty much ready to wrap up.
Mhm.
I'm sure.
Yes.
But
Yeah, they gave you direction to take to council now.
no, I now got quite a lot of additional things on this list. So, no, it's, you know, like I said, I know I'm not that new anymore, but like just establishing a lot of this stuff early on so that we're all working collaboratively towards like sure making the community better. I think is right. So
As long as we're discussing and trying, I think that we'll do that. We'll keep making it better.
cool, great. Well, this has been helpful for me, so.
Great. 4 points, what's going on?
They are just about ready to break ground. We're gonna schedule a pre-construction meeting with them. And then we have a housing update for council on the 12th. And there may be a potential to get some deed restricted product or apartments in that, so real affordable housing. So council may consider that on Monday, but nothing said yet.
Yeah, I
Wait,
talked to
they
Carla,
wanna break ground
she
like
thought it was pretty close.
It's, sorry to throw another thing on, I noticed some movement at the Habitat houses over there. Is it? I know there's some issues with the back wall or something, the retaining wall there.
Right, well, they are like presently applying for the third building permits, and they wanna do the entire retaining wall at once, like
Oh.
including the fourth. Because I know this first section, they did like half the wall. They're like, well, we wanna do the rest of the wall because it doesn't really make sense to like break it in two.
Mhm.
So we were talking to them I guess it was a month or more ago now, about just like letting them do all the retaining and grading work and then coming in for that final building permit later. But yeah, I haven't seen the building permit yet for the third one,
I don't think
but
we have it.
it should be evident.
I think we tried to make it so they could build that wall and then come back for the rest of the permit is how we handled it, because structurally that wall, there should not be a seam where there needs to be a seam if they don't do their whole thing.
Yeah.
And it also, the way that site is built, like if they don't pour it like that, the wall ends up being like 3 foot thick at one side and then 12 inches thick at the other side. So we just had to like work with the context a little bit. So I think that that's what happened is they issued the permit for the wall and then they'll come back for the rest of that building 3.
That one's taken a while.
They're saying they'll be done by fall.
I think that's likely. I think we'll see
Really?
At least
real like
like
construction
structure
soon.
units, right? Like
Yeah.
probably not all 4
Okay.
blocks by fall, but at least these first 2 that were approved.
There was a lot
Just
of
curious.
utility work and things like that. That's
I'm
a
sure,
complicated site.
I'm sure.
We were talking about like very intermittent closures of the one road in order to tap the line, but it's brief.
Cool.
The other big project that's coming soon
Come
is
on to this good.
Man,
Yeah.
Virginia and Virginia Canyon Road reconstruction projects are going to start pretty soon, probably this summer. So they're just trying to finalize design, and then there'll be some more information that comes out, but it'll be the first phase of the Virginia Street project, and then Virginia Canyon will be scheduled for the new utilities and everything.
Sweet.
Really necessary work, but it will have an impact.
Yeah, isn't that what all this?
All right, cool, good.
All right,
Dylan, thanks. It's
Yeah.
amazing having somebody who's full-time on this stuff.
And he
It's
lives
wonderful.
here.
You did wonderful, man. You have a ton on your plate. It's
Well,
wonderful. having
Now we
somebody-
gotta get Nick living up.
yeah, Dylan and I have
See
been
what I
working
can
pretty good
do.
together, so it's nice having another person that
I'm sure.
understands what we're talking about
We
here.
gotta get Jonathan living up here.
Yeah. One of these days, hopefully, interest rates ever go down.
Tell
You
some,
know, you can get
some folks with
between
inflated
5 and
opinions.
6 right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we're
I
at,
talked to Carly.
ours is like 2.8 right now.
That's a
Yeah.
tough one to beat.
Yeah,
tell some folks with over inflated opinions of their house is worth to calm down.
Yeah. No, it's, yeah.
Good night, you
Joe.
feel better.
Well, I think she hung up, didn't she?
Oh, totally.
Okay.
all right, so all I have to do is end both of these, right?
Yep.